Capitano, arguably the most anticipated character in the game, admired by his comrades and respected by his foes. He's mine and many others' favorite harbinger. There are lots of theories about who he could be, the most widely known being the Bloodstained Knight theory I covered a while back, but we know very little for a fact. We do know that he's honorable, well liked by most people, and Childe looks up to him as a sort of role model. On its own, Childe looking up to him is innocuous, but after finding out what I have, it makes a lot more sense, and I'd bet is inspired by some real-life history. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me start with the little threads I discovered that began to unravel into this theory. After looking into the tiny amount of lore we have on Natlan, and it being a nation of dragons, it led me to reading about the most famous dragon slayer, the Norse warrior Sigurd, also known as Siegfried. And then, everything started coming together. So let me explain my thoughts. Capitano in Natlan. The harbingers we've met so far have nearly all originated from the nation they take the Gnosis from. Senora in Mondstadt, Scaramouche in Inazuma, Dottore in Sumeru, and Arlecchino in Fontaine. Liyue is the odd one out here, but during Yelan's quest, we learn of Pantalone's involvement with the nation, and he seems to be in charge of controlling the Mora, with him owning the Northland Bank. So maybe this was only a theme thought of after 1.1. We also haven't had a harbinger from Natlan yet. Being a nation of warriors, I think Capitano would fit that role pretty well. Natlan seems to be a mix of Mesoamerican, African, and Spanish influences. Though Spain might seem like an odd addition, it ties into the history of the Spanish conquistadors invading the Americas in the 16th century, with many choosing to live there. And Capitano in the Commedia dell'arte is from Spain, based on the Cordelos who traveled to the Americas. But Sigurd is from Norse and Germanic mythology, so how does he have ties to Natlan? Let's take a look into the legends of Sigurd and see what secrets it might reveal about Capitano. Sigurd's origins. Sigurd has multiple legends written about him, with contradictions even within the same texts, like the Nibelungenlied, a story that seems to be a big influence on Genshin's writers. We'll be using a bunch of these legends I'll list on the screen here. In the Thidrek saga, Sigurd was the son of the Frankish king Sigmund and Queen Sisibe of Spain. Either due to Sigmund suspecting infidelity or him being killed by a rival clan, Sisibe has to flee and gives birth to Sigurd in the Black Forest, dying soon after. Sigurd survives for a year until he's found by the smith Mimir. Interesting name if you saw the last video. Anyway, the versions of the story branch out here, with Mimir or Regan, another smith, raising him, but planning to kill him due to him being a rebellious kid. In both stories, he's sent to kill a dragon, and in the Regan version, Sigurd asks for a sword to do it. With his great strength, he shatters each sword Regan makes, until he asks him to reforge his father's shattered sword, known as Balmung or Gram, meaning wrath. With it, he cuts the anvil in two and sets off to kill the dragon. An old man known as the Wanderer joins him on his journey, who we find out is Odin in disguise. Sigurd kills the dragon and accidentally drinks its blood, which allows him to understand birds, depicted as ravens here. He overhears them discussing the smith's plot to kill him. So he covers himself in the dragon's blood, making his skin like horn or dragon scales, and granting him near invincibility. However, there is one area he misses on his shoulder, reminiscent of Achilles' heel. He kills the smith and gains wisdom from eating some of the dragon's heart, also taking its treasure, which sometimes included a robe of invisibility, that gave him the strength of 12 men. The birds tell him to go to a palace on a mountain where the Valkyrie Sigurdrifa sleeps, surrounded by flames. She is sometimes known as Brunhild and is a great warrior with fiery red hair. He passes through the flames and the wall of shields around her before waking her up. She explains that because she disobeyed Odin, he pricked her with a magical thorn which put her to sleep. As thanks, she teaches Sigurd how to use runes, which are associated with powerful magic. In history, Siegbert I has some similarities to the mythical Siegfried or Sigurd. He was the son of Clotar and brother to Caribert, taking over Caribert's lands after he died. Siegbert is also succeeded by his son Childebert. Maybe it's nothing, but what an intriguing group of names, especially with Child looking up to Capitano. A child of two nations. Sigurd's parents, Sigmund and Sisibe, were of Frankish and Spanish origin. We've already linked Spain with Natlan, and the Frankish side represents Conria, with Clotar and Caribert being Frankish kings of the Merovingian dynasty. We also learn during the Caribert quest that Clotar having a child out of wedlock with a woman from Mondstadt meant that he couldn't be close to either of them due to the scandalous nature of it. If Capitano's mother had to escape Conria due to being exiled, I think she went back to Natlan, as returning to her home nation does make the most sense if she was trying to escape the Conrian nobles. Capitano's Conrian heritage may have been hinted at by Mika's description of his eyes too, with them described as dark blue and glowing. Sigurd gaining a horn-like skin from covering himself in dragon's blood reminded me of the consecrated beasts we first saw in Sumeru. They gain a bone-like shell and elemental powers from eating the remains of deceased gods. We also learned about Jacob eating some of Elenus and transforming into an iniquitous Baptist, which made me notice that the other neo-humans all have a bone-like substance on their arms and legs too. So I wonder if Capitano eating a dragon gave him newfound powers, like the ability to reincarnate after death, which may also be hinted at with his potential constellation of 3 nails, like Jesus being known for his resurrection. Sigurd and Capitano are talked about in a similar way too, with both being praised immensely by anyone who knows them. Everyone said that no man now living or ever after would be born who would be equal to him in strength, courage, and in all sorts of courtesy, as well as in boldness and generosity that he had above all men, and that his name would never perish in the German tongue, and the same was true with the Norsemen. And Capitano, described by the Wanderer,
the ever-righteous captain, the brave and fearless captain, the nigh invincible captain. Even my mechanical ears demand maintenance after listening to so many compliments from the members of the Fatui. Don't you think that possessing absolute righteousness is actually a latent danger? And that's without taking his great personal strength into account.
So I think he was raised in Natlan, but was seen as an outsider due to his Conrian heritage. Which reminds me of another great warrior from Natlan, the exiled hero Tenoch. Tenoch. The Nahuatl symbols of Tenoch's name are found in the Mexican flag, Tetl the rock, and Nochli, the prickly pear cactus. This cactus is important in Aztec legends, but to not get too off track, what I'm getting at is the rock and cactus mixture. Wouldn't a cactus made of stone look something like horns or dragon scales, like the skin of Sigurd? Perhaps he was given the name Tenoch to represent his appearance, assuming his dragon skin was noticeable. It may be a coincidence, But his weapon, the talking stick, uses the shells from consecrated beasts to ascend, with the Oasis garden materials referencing the goddess of flowers, who will be very important in a minute. Archon's ashes. It seems that Tenoch was exiled thousands of years ago, stating he belongs no longer to any tribe, and one of his allies even petitioned the Pyro Archon for his exile in the past. What I'm wondering is, why? There's a few possibilities I can think of. If the Pyro Archon is partly inspired by the Valkyries Sigurd saved, with both being red-haired warrior queens entombed in flames as Xbalanque is now, perhaps the birds told him to rescue her, breaking a seal that she was maintaining to prevent the Pyro's sovereign or the Abyss from rising up. Alternatively, he didn't follow the rules of a sacred tournament and refused to kill his opponent, going against the law that the losers must turn to ash. With Capitano being known for his honor, I can imagine he'd refrain from killing someone he considered defenseless due to his own sense of justice. This may tie into his similarities with the Toltec ruler Xiacatl Quetzalcoatl, who was a hero that ended all human sacrifice during his reign. Like Sigurd, he was born to a mother that died soon after, and raised himself in the wilderness. He was also said to strangely resemble the Spanish people. At the end of his story, he left Mesoamerica to search for his holy resting place, vowing to one day return and reclaim his city. We don't know if any of the Pyro Archons will be based on Himeko Murata, but with the red hair and flame powers, as well as her popularity, I'd say it's likely one of them will be. Spoilers for Honkai Impact 3rd here, but the Himeko from the previous era became corrupted by the Honkai, basically the Abyss, killed her whole squad except for Hua, who is also known as Phoenix later, and turned Australia into a burning hellscape within a week. Her friend Kevin was ordered to take her out. After an intense battle, she seemed to regain her mind, but he was told that they couldn't take any chances and ended her in front of Hua, a memory that haunted them both. Maybe the cries of a phoenix in the Marajavari are tied to a similar story. Just as a little extra, Kevin was from a place called Mu, which seems to be a partial inspiration for Natlan, according to different translations naming it Mu Natlan. I'll link the thread in the description. Though the story won't be one for one, if Capitano and the Pyro Archon were in a similar situation, I can see why he left Natlan, and why when he returns to recruit allies, there doesn't seem to be an Archon there to fight against the Abyss. Either that, or the Black Tide he and his allies fought against was the Pyro Archon, after succumbing to the Abyss. The Berserker's Roses. The Berserker set seems to describe the fall of Khaenri'ah 500 years ago, and one of their warriors going mad with rage. It even fits with Sigurd appearing in a story set in a rose garden in Germany, which Khaenri'ah is partly based on. But I think the set might be about the battle that created the Marajavari. In the Berserker's story, he seems to die and be reborn in flames during a war in his homeland between gods and mortals. He fights for years and apparently dies on a battlefield where blood flows like rivers under a red setting sun, something we shouldn't be able to see in Khaenri'ah. At least visually, the red setting sun fits pretty well with Natlan being a nation of fire. But even if the story is initially set in Khaenri'ah after everything we went over, and before Capitano joined the Fatui, it'd make sense he'd return to his homeland of Natlan to die, and draw some similarities to his mother, as well as Xiacatl Quetzalcoatl, who was searching for his holy resting place and told his people he would one day return. It's said that the Berserker never had a family, friends, or a lover. If what we've gone over so far is correct, Capitano's father was killed or indisposed before he was born. His mother died after giving birth to him, and he was shunned by the people of Natlan for being an outsider. His rose garden goes up in flames, which fits with fighting in what would become the Mara Javari, or Sea of Ashes, especially since the Lava Walker describes there being fiery red flowers that bloom there. Since Natlan is partly based on Mesoamerica, the Rose Garden may refer to the Xochimilco, one of the 7 tribes of the region. The name means flower field, referring to the many flowers and crops grown there. If it was turned from a sea of flowers into a sea of ashes after the Archon died, I can see why Vanessa's tribe left. The Xochimilco tribe was unique at the time, as they had a female ruler unlike anywhere else in the region. For us, this fits with the Pyro Archon, but may have started with another goddess before her, Columbina the Scorched Dove. She seems to be based on the goddess Ichpochtli, which means maiden, and is associated with doves, flowers, human desires, and weaving. This fits pretty well with Columbina being known as a damsel or a young lady in the Commedia dell'arte, and her constellation being the dove. Ichpochtli is also a protector of young mothers and patroness of pregnancy and childbirth. So if Capitano's mother died giving birth to him in her territory, I can see Columbina taking an interest in him. The association with flowers connects her with the goddess of flowers, and the Seelie curse to never look at the heavens or have their memories and forms taken explains why she covers her eyes. Since Capitano is associated with ravens, as we went over in the Bloodstained Night video, I wonder if Columbina was the one who spoke through them to guide him, as in the Commedia dell'arte, Columbina uses Capitano to make Arlecchino jealous. Sharing the trait of guiding him as the ravens do, she might even possess birds to view the world, getting around Celestia's curse. But Columbina is associated with doves, so why use ravens? Since the first civilization was based on ancient Greece, there's a story that fits this pretty nicely. Apollo, the god of prophecy, sends a white raven to spy on his lover, who the raven reports was unfaithful. Apollo was furious and scorched the raven, turning its feathers black. This unfair treatment parallels the Seelie, who were cursed by Celestia for interacting with the armies of the Second Who Came, when it was Celestia who sent them out to fight. The goddess of flowers was also associated with birds, like the Simurgh, who was partially created by her and Rukkhadevata, tasked with guardianship of the border between new birth and death. And a genie from the desert describes people as ravens, which may imply that the Seelie losing their divine forms to resemble humans would have them metaphorically turn from divine doves into mortal ravens. If Columbina held resentment for Celestia because of this, she'd probably want to get revenge by using Capitano to go against their wishes, also explaining her joining the Fatui. Thinking about it, maybe she was the one entombed in flames and used a young Capitano to free herself, with people having to take her place to maintain the seal. One last thing on Columbina. Ichpochtli's mother is a goddess of life, death, and rebirth, possibly hinting at Columbina's connection to the Shade of Death, who we know nothing about, except they're likely associated with fire and the feather artifact piece. If Capitano didn't gain the ability to revive from eating a dragon or god, maybe Columbina gave it to him, as Andrias was granted powers of a god from who I think was the Seelie in the Drunkard's Tale book. Ravenwood. Since Capitano and Andrias have blue glowing eyes, and Capitano's association with ravens, I wonder if during his exile as Tenoch, he went to Mondstadt and became known as Ravenwood, the Knight of Boreas, who had a bond with a wolf there, but wouldn't stay in Mondstadt for long. This fits with Sigurd being a wandering warrior and may have been him checking on Vanessa's tribe, possibly blaming himself for them leaving Natlan. His actions in Mondstadt killing demons with his wolf also reminds me of the Wild Hunt, a hunting party made up of the souls of the dead or ghostly dogs. It was associated with Odin as the god of death and sometimes led by Sigurd. Perhaps this is what Capitano's elite troops are based on, with them being described as lifeless. After the wolf died, the knight left the wolf's gravestone behind, which was once just a sheet of metal given to him by a blacksmith, referencing Guts' sword from Berserk, who is also partly based on Sigurd. After leaving Mondstadt, he may have returned to Conria to avenge his parents. In one of Sigurd's stories, he avenges his father, and Siegfried is said to go to Nibelungenland, Conria, single-handedly conquering the kingdom and taking 1,000 troops to follow him. These troops might be condensed down to the elite group that Capitano keeps with him till this day, and may suggest he has some sort of claim to the Conrian throne. So what do you think about Capitano? Is he going to solo all of Natlan, or do you think there'll be a shocking twist where something he doesn't expect happens? Thank you very much for watching until the end. I really appreciate your support. As always, good luck on your wishes, and I hope you have a wonderful day.